The sky over Vesta Prime boiled with fire. From orbit, the battle looked like an infection spreading across a dying world. Cities crumbled into blackened scars, oceans hissed into steam under orbital strikes. Above it all, the Kthar Armada hovered, a web of glistening warships. They came to finish what they started, the erasure of humanity. Inside the cracked hull of the Vanguard, Captain Reland Voss wiped blood from his temple and forced his battered body upright. The command deck around him was a ruin, sparks rained from broken panels, the air stank of burnt metal and fear. "Status!" he barked, his voice raw but alive. Lieutenant Sarah Yuen, her face pale but eyes sharp, turned from a console that flickered more than it worked. "Shields are down. Engines at 30%. Weapons," she hesitated then said. "One railgun functional." "That's it." Reland spat a curse and leaned over the map table, the hologram jerking in and out of focus. Red. Everything was red. Human forces across Vesta Prime and its orbit were collapsing. He slammed his fist onto the table. "We have to hold Sector 9. If that gate falls, they'll wipe out the entire outer colonies." Yuen's hands clenched into fists. "Captain, we can't stop them alone." A voice crackled from the shattered comms station, Commander Trask, planetside. "Voss. They breached the lines. Evacuate. Save what you can." Silence filled the bridge like a funeral shroud. Reland looked out through the viewport at the seething storm of fire and metal. Somewhere out there, millions of civilians waited for rescue. And humanity's last hope for survival, Gate 9, was about to fall. "No," he said, quiet but ironclad. "We don't run. We make them bleed for every inch." Yuen's lip quivered, just for a second. Then she nodded. Outside, a Kthar dreadnought loomed into view, massive enough to block out the bleeding sun. Its weapon banks lit up, an execution. Reland tapped the comms, opening a fleet-wide channel. His voice steadied, became something larger than fear. "This is Captain Voss of the Vanguard." Across the battered human fleet, dying ships and broken fighters listened. "They think we're beaten. They think they can erase us like we're a mistake. But they forgot who we are." He paused, letting the words breathe. "We are the storm. We are the fire they cannot extinguish. If this is where we end, then we end as legends. With every gun blazing." The bridge crew stared at him, torn uniforms, bloodied faces, and in their eyes he saw it, the ember refusing to die. "All units," he finished, "charge the enemy. No retreat. No surrender." A heartbeat of silence. Then a chorus of voices crackled through the comms, affirmatives, war cries, oaths in 100 dialects of old Earth. Yuen slammed her fist onto her console. "Railgun charge, Captain! Target their dreadnought's ventral core," Reland ordered, his voice low and fierce. "One shot. Make it count!" The Vanguard shuddered as it limped forward, a wounded beast facing down a Titan. Around them, battered frigates and fighters rallied, engines blazing blue against the dark. The Kthar dreadnought's main cannon began to hum, a deep vibration felt in the marrow. One blast would atomize them. "Steady," Reland whispered. On screen, the railgun lock flickered green. "Fire!" A flash, bright enough to blind, lanced from the Vanguard's railgun. It punched into the dreadnought's underbelly, right at the core where their armor thinned. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the enemy ship convulsed, vomiting fire and debris into space. Its spine fractured like glass. An explosion tore it apart, a silent scream across the void. Cheers roared over the comms. Yuen laughed, wild and ragged. "Direct hit!" But Reland's gaze stayed hard. "We're not done." The death of the dreadnought bought seconds, nothing more. From the edge of the battle, new shapes appeared. Human reinforcements, black-hulled cruisers emblazoned with the phoenix crest of the Terra Remnant fleet. Commander Alira Vance's voice cut through the chaos. "Vanguard, this is Resolute. Sorry we're late." Reland allowed himself a breath, a smile. "Good to see you, Resolute. Welcome to the apocalypse." The human fleet surged like a second wave, slamming into the Kthar with fury born of extinction denied. Missiles howled. Plasma cannons spat light into the dark. The tide turned. For the first time in 100 years of war, the Kthar flinched. Inside the battered vanguard, Reland gripped the rail and watched humanity do what it did best: survive, fight, endure. "We are the storm," he murmured again, more to himself than anyone. Behind him, Yun whispered, almost reverently, "And they can't stop us." The viewport was filled with fire and broken stars, but somewhere beyond the wreckage, hope ignited anew. The stars outside Vanguard's viewport shifted, once a battlefield, now a graveyard. Wreckage floated past like frozen screams. Human and Kthar corpses tumbled in silence, lit only by the flickering remnants of dying ships. On the bridge, Reland Voss stood rigid, eyes locked on the tactical display. Victory was an illusion. They had bought a moment, not salvation. Commander Vance's voice crackled through the channel. "Vanguard report? What's your status?" Reland's jaw tightened. "Holding barely. We can't take another hit." "Understood," Vance replied. "We're regrouping for a final push. Hold the gate at any cost." As her voice faded, Lieutenant Yun stepped closer, her face grave. "Sir, incoming message, encrypted, high priority." Reland frowned. "Source?" Yun hesitated. "It's from within our fleet." That sent a chill down his spine. "Patch it through," he ordered. A private channel opened. A voice filled the bridge, low, familiar. "Captain Voss. This is Admiral Sorek." Reland stiffened. Sorek, the architect of the first evacuation, the man who had abandoned colonies to burn for strategic gain. Reland hadn't heard his voice since the tribunal. Sorek spoke calmly, almost coldly. "Your orders are changed. Gate 9 is lost. You are to evacuate immediately. Save key personnel. Leave the civilians." Shock rippled through the bridge. Reland stared at the speaker as if it had grown fangs. "Say that again." "You heard me," Sorek said. "The Terra Council has deemed Vesta Prime non-essential. Prioritize military assets. Civilians are expendable." A beat of silence, heavy as a falling hammer. Yun whispered, "They're abandoning them, again." Reland felt the old rage stir, the memory of screaming cities, of promises broken. He cut the channel and turned to his crew, his voice ablade. "We stay. We fight." "But sir," Yun began. He cut her off. "We are not leaving them to die." Around him, the bridge crew exchanged glances. Fear. Conflict. But also something harder, loyalty. Reland's comms officer, a grizzled sergeant named Creel, growled. "Orders or no, I didn't sign up to be a coward." Reland allowed himself a tight nod. "Good. Because this just became a suicide mission." Another tremor rocked the ship. Through the viewport they saw it, fresh Kthar reinforcements slipping from the edge of the system, dozens of sleek black destroyers. Vance's fleet was moving to intercept, but the numbers weren't in their favor. Yun's voice shook. "If they breach the gate, then we lose the outer colonies," Reland said. "And everything after that." A calm beeped again, an open broadcast from the Kthar. The alien voice was oily, inhuman. The translation unit stuttered but managed to deliver its poison. "Surrender. You are dust clinging to dying light. Save your species, kneel." The bridge went still. Reland's lip curled. He keyed the broadcast open. "No," he said simply. And he cut the line. The crew straightened, shoulders squaring. In that refusal, something shifted, the seed of rebellion sprouted into defiance. "Bring weapons online," Reland commanded. "Patch me through to any ship still breathing." A chorus of battered captains answered, a patchwork fleet held together by nothing but will. "This is Captain Voss," he said, voice steady over the noise of dying systems. "Command has abandoned us. The enemy demands we kneel." He let that hang for a moment. "I say we teach them what it means to bleed." The battered fleet roared its agreement. Vance broke through the calms, laughing, fierce. About damn time someone said it. On the tactical screen, ships began shifting formation, not retreating, but rallying around Gate 9 like knights around a wounded king. The plan was madness. They would lose. Relan knew it. But they would make the Kthar pay for every life they tried to snuff out. Yuan turned to him, eyes burning. Ready when you are, Captain? Then let's write a story they'll never forget. Outside, the darkness seethed as the Kthar armada advanced. Inside Vanguard, humanity prepared to meet the storm head-on. And for the first time in a century, the fearsome Kthar would learn the cost of underestimating their prey. The first blast took the Resolute clean through the center. 1 second, it was there, leading the counterattack, engines burning bright. The next, a bloom of fire consumed it. The shockwave punched through space, shattering nearby cruisers like glass ornaments. On board the Vanguard, Captain Relan Voss gripped the rails so hard his knuckles cracked. Alarms howled through the bridge. Damage report! He shouted over the chaos. Yuan, pale and shaking, slammed her hands against the controls. Minimal, we caught the edge. But the fleet. Her voice broke. On the tactical display, the human formation buckled. A third of their ships gone in an instant. This wasn't random. Creel muttered, grim. They were waiting for us. A realization clawed its way into Relan's mind. Betrayal, he said aloud. Before he could speak further, a new transmission crackled onto the bridge, unauthorized, direct, unmistakable. Admiral Sarek. To all surviving human vessels, stand down immediately. Surrender to the Kthar. Further resistance will not be tolerated. Shock knifed through the crew. Creel's face twisted. He sold us out. Yuan looked at Relan, horror dawning. Sir, it's a setup. The Council ordered him to negotiate our surrender. Relan's stomach churned. Everything, the call to evacuate, the lack of reinforcements, the timing of the Kthar strike, it all fit. They had been bait. He slammed his fist into the console, sending sparks flying. On screen, Kthar destroyers moved with eerie precision, boxing them in. Human ships, those still breathing, hesitated, confused and leaderless. We follow your orders, Captain, Creel said, voice raw but steady. Yuan nodded, hands hovering over weapons systems. Relan closed his eyes for a heartbeat. The right move, the safe move, was surrender. Survival. But survival without honor was death, all the same. He opened the fleet-wide comms. This is Captain Voss, he said, voice ringing through every remaining human ship. You heard Sorek. You know what they want. He drew a breath, steadying the fire in his chest. But I will not kneel. I will not let our children inherit ashes and shame. The bridge was silent, the galaxy holding its breath. If you stand with me, he finished, then fight. Fight with everything you have left. For a moment, nothing. Only the static hiss of a dying battlefield. Then, one by one, human ships activated their weapons. Engines flared back to life. Shields powered up. They had chosen. Yuan wiped her eyes and smiled, fierce and ragged. You heard the man. Weapons hot. The Vanguard surged forward, leading the charge. They slammed into the Kthar line like a battering ram, missiles streaking, railguns pounding. The enemy, caught between betrayal and defiance, faltered. But the cost was brutal. The frigate Ardent Flame was sliced in half by a Kthar sidebeam. The Sparrowhawk exploded into a nova of shrapnel. Human ships burned like candles against the void. Still they fought. On the bridge, the crew moved as one, battle-drilled reflexes overriding fear. Incoming fire! Port side! Yuan shouted. Brace! Relan ordered. A blast rocked the Vanguard, tearing metal from her flank. Hull breaches screamed warnings. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. We've lost Deck 5! Creel yelled. Relan wiped blood from his forehead, never taking his eyes from the tactical screen. We hold the line, he said through gritted teeth. Outside, amidst the wreckage, Gate 9 shimmered, a broken ring of ancient human ingenuity, barely functioning. It was their last salvation, and their last stand. Suddenly, the comms flared. "Vanguard, this is the Silver Lance! We're moving to cover you." The message cut off mid-sentence. Relan watched helplessly as the Silver Lance vanished into a burst of white-hot light. Ewan flinched. "They're targeting anyone protecting the gate. They mean to erase us," Creel said. "No survivors." Relan's mind raced. They couldn't hold. Not like this. Every second they bought was a miracle, but miracles ran dry. Unless. He stared at the gate's readouts. Broken. Power levels unstable. But one last function remained: self-destruction. A wild, impossible plan took shape. "Prepare overload protocols on Gate 9, he said. Ewan jerked her head up, eyes wide. "Sir? If we detonate the core, we'll wipe out everything in this sector." Creel swore. "Including us." Relan nodded grimly. "Better a pyre than a prison." A beat passed. Ewan straightened, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Setting overload protocols?" On the viewport, Kthar's ships closed in like vultures. Time was measured now in heartbeats. Relan opened a last broadcast, fleet-wide, unsecured. "This is Captain Voss. To any human soul who can hear me, you were never forgotten. You were never dust." He paused, voice thickening. "We are the storm. And today, the storm will not die quietly." Across the battlefield, damaged ships turned, aligning for one last, defiant push. The gate's core began to glow, a heartbeat of pure destruction. The Kthar must have realized too late. Their ships tried to scatter, desperate now. Relan gripped the rail. "Hold fast," he whispered. The gate exploded. Light consumed the battlefield, blinding, pure, absolute. For a moment, there was no pain. No fear. Only the searing truth that humanity had chosen dignity over surrender. Silence followed the explosion. Not the absence of sound, but a deep, heavy silence, like the galaxy itself held its breath. The gate was gone. A wound of light and dust spiraled where it once stood, a final act of defiance written in fire. The Vanguard drifted at the edge of the blast zone, scarred and broken but somehow still alive. Captain Relan Voss opened his eyes, blinking through the smoke filling the ruined bridge. Warning sirens wailed faintly, fading in and out like dying voices. Around him, his crew stirred, bloodied, battered, but breathing. "Status," Relan croaked, his throat raw from smoke and strain. Ewan coughed, pulling herself upright from where she'd been thrown. "Power at 10%. Life support, holding. Engines dead." Creel wiped soot from his face, a grim smile tugging at his mouth. "Could be worse." Outside the shattered viewport, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Kthar's ships spun helplessly, their formation shattered. Some burned, others fled, engines flickering in retreat. They had not expected humanity to choose annihilation over submission. They had expected fear. Instead, they met fury. Relan stood, every muscle protesting. He staggered to the center of the bridge, surveying what remained. "We did it," Ewan said, voice breaking. Relan met her gaze. "We survived." A faint, choked laugh from Creel. "For now." The comms panel sputtered to life, a weak signal breaking through static. "Vanguard, this is Freeborn Station." A pause broken by interference. "We received your broadcast. Survivors rallying. Reinforcements en route." Hope flared, painful and sudden. They weren't alone. Humanity had heard their final roar. "Patch them through," Relan said. The broken bridge filled with voices, dozens, maybe hundreds. Other ships. Other worlds. Colonies thought lost, pockets of resistance hidden in the dark. One by one, they answered the call. "We stand with the storm. We remember who we are. Humanity endures." Tears blurred Relan's vision, unbidden but unstoppable. He turned to his crew, the remnants of a ship that should have died hours ago, and saluted. "You held the line," he said. "You gave them something to believe in." Yuan smiled, teeth flashing through blood and grime. We're stubborn like that. A low rumble shook the vanguard. For a moment, Relan tensed. Another attack? But no. Outside, human ships, some ancient, some new, dropped from FTL. A ragged, desperate fleet, yet undeniable in its strength. They formed up, encircling the ruins of Gate 9 like wolves protecting a fallen brother. The Kthar's ships, scattered and leaderless, didn't press the attack. They fled. For the first time in a century, humanity had turned back the tide. On the bridge, Yuan wiped her face and said, half laughing, half sobbing, "Captain, we won." Relan let the words settle into him like a balm against 1,000 wounds. "No," he said quietly. "We reminded them who we are." Hours passed. Emergency crews patched life support. Engineers rigged makeshift engines. Medical teams stitched the bleeding and counted the dead. The price had been monstrous. But the spark lived. In the ship's mess hall, what crew could gather did. Dirty faces. Torn uniforms. Raw eyes. Yet every head lifted when Relan entered. He climbed onto a broken table, using it as a platform. "Listen well," he said, voice low but carrying. "The enemy thought we would break. They thought we would kneel." He swept his gaze across the room. Soldiers, engineers, medics, children of a dying world who chose fire over surrender. They were wrong. A murmur, growing louder, like a rising storm. "We are humanity," he said, voice tightening. "We endure. We fight. We rise." The mess hall exploded into cheers, hoarse, broken, but deafening. Yuan shoved her way through the crowd, laughing as she punched Relan's arm. "Speech of the century, sir." He grinned, exhausted but alive. Across the hall, Creel lifted a battered flask. "To the storm!" he bellowed. The crew roared their agreement. "To the storm!" And in that broken, battered room, surrounded by ruins and memories of fire, Relan Voss saw the future, not promised, not easy, but burning with possibility. Humanity had not just survived. It had become something more. Something unstoppable. Later, alone on the observation deck, Relan watched the debris fields turn slowly against the stars. He heard footsteps but didn't turn. Yuan stood beside him, silent for a moment. "You think they'll come back?" she asked. Relan nodded. "Eventually. And us?" He smiled faintly. "We'll be waiting." The two of them stood in silence, watching the bruised sky heal, bit by bit. In the distance, new human ships blinked into existence. Scouts, settlers, warriors. A fleet reborn. Relan closed his eyes and let the weight settle across his shoulders, lighter somehow than before. The storm wasn't over. But this time, it would be humanity bringing the thunder.